On for 8 hours.
Yeah, it shouldn't be for 8 hours. Okay, we're live. And all the viewers are shuffling in. Wow, by the masses. Everybody be careful. Take a seat quickly. But don't hurt yourselves.
No pushing, no shoving.
Let's see, 3, and that includes us. All right. Hey, do I need to send anything else out to the that link to the masses, to the droves? I guess if somebody wants to take that, Salvo says he's finishing up. We'll be home by 10, 15 minutes.
Very nice.
And I'm seeing some viewers pop in. I'm seeing them pop up. They're just it's like the countdown timer that has the thousandths of a second. It's just moving so fast. The viewers, I can't even keep up with it. Or I would do like the we lost one. We lost one. We lost 50%, and they're back. And I'll start because everybody will catch up, and it'll be on the replay, right?
Absolutely.
So, yep. All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Hazmat Guys Nation Roundtable. This is a multimedia platform to bring hazmat response information and training tips from hazmat members from around the globe. I am Phil Ambrose, and I will be acting as host for the show tonight. And I am joined by the Kosh, Bob Kashignano, out of Florida, and Mike Monaco, somewhere in New York.
Long Island, New York.
And Bob, go ahead and tell us about yourself.
The Kosh. Hello. Bob Kashignano, Hazmat Lieutenant Orlando, instructor for HazSim, and we're just happy to spread the wealth of knowledge. Actually, I have none, but these guys have a lot. And share some information amongst...
We got more people coming on?
Share some information amongst each other and hopefully make our jobs and lives a little safer.
And I'm Mike Monaco, co-host of the Hazmat Guys. And I'm a New York City firefighter, hazmat technician, if you would. And we're here to do the exact same thing, to learn, be learned, and share whatever we have in hopes that others will share with us.
Outstanding. And we're going to have at least one more coming on. Everybody knows Bobby Salveson, also from the Hazmat Guys podcast, and that Hazmat Company 1 there in New York. And when he gets on, he'll also join. Happy to have everybody here. And one of the things we want to do off the bat, which Jason Rogers, who couldn't join us tonight, Jason, if you're listening, we miss you, was just kind of going over some news that had popped up, and then we were going to get into the meat of it. We had some shock-sensitive TATP incident in New York, and we had some information on that, or at least from a hazmat perspective, as well as answering some questions that we've gotten in through both the website and the Facebook page. So I could run through the news if you guys wanted, unless Kosh, you had that spooled up.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Wait, you said Jason Rogers. Who's that?
Oh, yeah, that guy.
That guy? Okay.
I know that guy. Everybody should know Jason Rogers from...
He's not here, so that means we can pick on him right now. He's not here.
Yeah, he finally takes a night off. The
guy that gets volunteered for stuff is the one that doesn't show up.
Does the work of 10 men, and he's what...
He really does.
Yeah, absolutely.
He does, yeah.
And with a smile on his face. We've had several, and what's been great is a lot of the information on Hazmat Nation and also coming through the podcast website. Obviously, we're mining the news for things that are attractive to us based on something that was hazmat. But even better is when we get them from, I just had one pop up before the show, and I'm not going to have time to read it for this one. But I guess fans and or enemies, whoever they are, that like to send us stuff, and then we get a little bit of inside information. Because there has been everything from the chemical mix-up forces residents to flee home that I think any of us that have sat on a hazmat rig for a period of time have probably been to something like that, and that was the accidental mixture of two chemical compounds, and they had to deal with that, and that was in Pennsylvania. And we also had something we can maybe spend a moment more on, because we have those in the room that are kind of familiar with this stuff, is the ammonia leak at the college gym. And I believe this was may have been a hockey rink. And if you go back in the podcast and the Hazmat Nation, I'll let Mike speak to it, there's actually been some good stuff on just that because I know, Mike, you responded to one at an ice rink there somewhere in your city.
In Brooklyn.
And for those that didn't catch that, you give a quick breakdown on what went down with that because
Yeah,
everybody.
sure. Basically what happened. Now I'm just to correct. I was not working that day, so I was not there. But to reiterate what did happen, they had an outdoor ice rink in one of the parks in Brooklyn, and the guys they periodically. Oh, beautiful face. They periodically drain the oil out of the system. I guess there's oil that mixes with the gas as it's compressed back and forth from a liquid to a gas. And every once in a while, they just got to drain off some of the oil. And they end up doing this by hand. And they basically take the oil, or they take a pipe, they put it in a barrel, and they open a valve. And when the oil stops coming out and the ammonia starts coming out, they just shut it off, and that's how they end up draining it. So there wasn't as much of a structural failure as there was an actual human interaction failure, where the guy didn't shut it off in time, he got overwhelmed, he ran out, and really all they do was go in there and shut down a valve. So it was a pretty straightforward run.
Awesome. And somebody asked about where was the ammonia incident today. There may have been one today, but I was referring to a couple of days ago, and that was in Maine. I believe it was on July 2nd for anybody that's counting. Welcome, Bobby. We had just gotten into some news, and we introduced you that you're showing up late, so it's still a good time to reintroduce yourself, and we'll continue on.
Oh, I'm Bobby from Nowheresville. No, I'm Bobby. I'm one of the co-hosts with Mike from the podcast, and well, I'm sure Mike talked to you all about it, but I apologize for being tardy.
I love the...
That's 10 demerits for you, Mr. Salveson.
And that's your graphics those are awesome. That's cool.
I'll have to show you how to do it. Very easy.
Just tape it to the screen, right?
Yeah, it's a big tape.
Just tape it, right. It's actually a really small banner.
And going through a little bit more news, because then the plan of the day, Bobby, we were going over the TATP, how it related to hazmat. And Mike had a question that came in through the Facebook page, and I'm hoping in conjunction with that, I should have a video that can go in with that. Not to call these nickel dime, they're always something, and that's they had several odor complaints. And then we get back into, there was a few more, and Jason had posted, which we already did a show on, which was the pool chemicals, because why? It's that time of year. So that was basically the news in brief. If you want news specific to hazmat, if you want it all in one place, check out Hazmat Nation. Check out also the Hazmat Guys, because anything on the news, we always try to tab it to a podcast that you should listen to, and give you some insight.
Yeah.
Well,
and as far as we're concerned, if it's not on Hazmat Nation, it didn't exist.
That's true.
Pretty much.
True.
It's not there, except for Kosh.
Do you want me to go into the whole what happened in New York City recently, and we'll go into the TATP?
Absolutely.
Again, all
Allegedly.
this all happened. There seemed to, if you haven't seen this, it seemed to have made a pretty big splash around the world. I think that there was over the 4th of July weekend, a young lad came in to New York City and doing a little touristing, and he was running across Central Park. Has a lot of granite, right? They're granite, right? Granite rocks.
Yep.
Right.
And he was doing his mountaineering thing on a grand scale of about 20 feet, and he stepped on something, and it blew up, and it took his foot off. That's facts. The kid was 18 years old. So
I think he still is 18.
Still 18. I don't think he had a birthday yet. So one of the things that was, again, rumor, being that me and Mike work in New York City, rumors running around all over the place that, everything from the kid was playing with fireworks, which is realistic because it was that weekend, all the way up to it was a terrorist act, and you can imagine where this went to. But one of the two things that did come out, and it's relatively sure, is that the device. Well, I'm not going to say device. What exploded was TATP. All right, so TATP is one of those types of very shock-sensitive explosives. It's normally known as acetone peroxide or triacetone triperoxide is actually the real name. But a relatively easy thing to make. I mean, all you really need is a peroxide and what the hell is it? The other thing.
An acid.
Acid, right?
Right.
Wait a second.
This is basic chemistry 101.
An acid and acetone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and what's crazy about this? It's beloved by those in the boom boom world because you can't detect it.
Right.
You know, dogs don't sniff it. Airports aren't picking it up.
You know, it's the fact that it doesn't have a nitrogen is, I guess, advantageous to the boom makers, but it's not good for us. And like Mike said, it's very hard for us to pick up. It's not impossible to pick up, but it's hard for us to pick up. This is the stuff that what was that clown's name? The shoe bomber.
Yeah, and the underwear.
Yeah. Richard Reed, was that his name?
Yeah,
Richard
yeah,
Reed.
I think Reed.
Yeah, Richard Reed.
Yeah.
He used this stuff, and we're not going to get down into the deep of the chemistry, but it's basically just a combination of this stuff, and it what do they call it? Not deflagrate. It decomposes explosively, but it takes. I mean, you can sneeze around this stuff and get it to go off. So. Which
then leads the question, and why? Because this was actually a question. My wife is a paramedic, so. She's first responder, so we talk about this kind of stuff. She says, "Well, why did this kid touch it with his foot and it go off, but yet the underwear bomber and the shoe bomber was able to get all the way onto an airplane with the stuff, and they tried to light it and nothing happened." So, anyone want to kind of dive into that a little bit?
That's kind of a touchy thing. I think one of the kind of going back to, I think I lost everybody for a second. Hold on, there we go. Kind of going back to what Bobby was saying, if we could just for a second, the making of it, we were talking about this offline, is very similar to what they use for making methamphetamine. Matter of fact, when you take crystal meth and you put it next to the TATP, it looks very similar. One of the classes that I teach, I have it next to each other, and I ask them, what is it? Oh, it's meth. It's crystal meth. And it's actually not. It looks very similar. The bomb technicians, the way they test some of this stuff, it is so sensitive, like Bobby mentioned, so shock sensitive, that they have a certain way, which we're not going to discuss, but they have a certain way of testing it just to find out if it is in fact that or if it is a drug. Like I tell all the guys, when they get a shipment of a white powder and it ends up being cocaine or methamphetamine or whatever, if it made it through, I guess I shouldn't mention specific carriers, but these companies that ship things, it's probably not going to be TATP if it's been handled so much. But one of the facts that we talked about earlier offline was that they keep it cool just like they do methamphetamine in a freezer. So when you go to a house or an apartment or something like that, and you happen to open up a refrigerator or a freezer, which hopefully we're not opening up anything, but should the situation arise, and you see a crystal-like material in a Pyrex dish in a freezer, stop, back up, run, don't walk, because you don't know if it's going to be TATP that's holding down, because of the cold, holding down the volatility of it, or are they trying to get to that crystal meth part of the whole scenario? It's very rare, but we have had in Florida, shocker, situations where the crystal meth heads have actually done TATP just because they were bored. So they wanted to make things. I guess when you're tweaking and you're up for 36 hours, you want to find stuff to do. So they were blowing stuff up in an area.
I can empathize with that.
Yeah. So they wanted to blow some stuff up in an area of Florida just to play around, and that's what led the law enforcement to their house. Not only did they bust their methamphetamine, but they found these very minute methods amounts of TATP. And just to carry it one step further, I think it was a couple years ago, there was a kid in Texas, Oklahoma, somewhere that had a backpack full of this stuff and was about to take it into a college football stadium. And when he opened up his backpack, again, being so shock sensitive, he blew himself up. When they went to his apartment, yeah, you know, it's justice. When they went to his apartment, they found all kinds of stuff. One quick note about going to his apartment, they set up the truck companies to visualize inside the windows from remote locations to see what they had versus somebody busting in the door, booby traps, whatever. They ended up having to, they called the mayor and said, listen, you're getting ready to lose a building because there was no real way to take care of this stuff other than to detonate in place. And they took several dump truck loads of dirt, put it around the building, and did exactly that, detonated it in place. So yeah, it's crazy stuff.
I think on the sensitivity, and of course I get to see the question and answers today, and plus it reminds me, and Todd Burton from San Diego County will correct me every time, but he had put, the question had just come up why the panty bomber and the shoe bomber, it really had to do with the moisture content. And Todd, correct me, but it's like picrates and picric acid as far as the moisture content. And no, it's not the moisture that makes it more sensitive. I'd say it's the lack of moisture. So that what they did there. And of course, before this show, I Googled, and yeah, it was TATP that was used in Brussels for the terror attacks there. So maybe out of convenience, or it's something really we're going to see more.
It's a wonderful chemical to use, you know, from a point of view of a terrorist because it's so easy to make. But there's a very, very, very fine line when you're taking the precipitate out and you're drying it off, that you need it wet to transport it, but you need it dry to be explosive. So there's this, there's a, you know, if you don't get that fine line just right, you're going either boom beforehand or you're just going to kind of hit her away into a flame like the underwear bomber.
Right. You know, and TATP is not. It's not like thermochemically efficient. It's not a very favored event. It's like when you have like something like TATP, there's a fuel component and then there's the oxidizing component. And when it goes off, the fuel is oxidized and the combustion reaction spreads and it releases large amounts of heat and expansion. But with the TATP, it's more of like a burst where there's not to get to, you know, there's ozone and there's going to be a couple of acetone molecules. But the thing is that just a little bit of this stuff rapidly. This is kind of like that azide stuff that they have in your
sodium azide.
Yeah, the thing that goes off in your car, the airbags.
Airbags.
The airbags.
Because it expands so quickly. This TATP is just like that. So it's not really like a thermochemical reaction where it's going to explode and get huge real fast and real hot. This is going to expand rapidly, and this is going to work more on like disrupting your internal organs and blowing at the eardrums, anything that's a what do they call it? The I'm blanking on words tonight. The soft cavities, right? The cavity organs where they can be compressed and then blown up. The lungs, the eyes, the ears. So it's a different type of explosive than when we think about explosives. Each one has a different like nuance.
Yeah.
Right, and the percentages that that they use for some of the stuff is not. It's fairly readable, but they got to go to certain places to get it. So.
Yeah, let's talk about that as a first responder. All right, so here's kind of, and correct me if I'm wrong, Salvo, but this is kind of as a first responder's point of view. Once the explosion happens, from our point of view, there's nothing that we're going to do. Bomb squad's going to go in, they're going to do what they have to do. But from a making it point of view, this is where we as first responders, EMS, going into buildings all the time, going into people's homes, water leaks, things like that, this is where we can really make a difference, where we can identify something that really kind of looks odd. So you were saying that the concentrations, you're referring to the peroxide, correct?
Correct.
So there's right. We have two ways of obtaining this high peroxide. We can either go to industry and obtain it, or we can take low concentration stuff and boil it off. So what would be the two big things on each, or the one big thing in each one of those categories that would set us off that, hey, something's not right here?
I would say the
That's a good
concentration
question.
of hydrogen peroxide. I mean, if the guy is going to CVS or Rite Aid or something like that to get that, what is that, 3% peroxide, it's not enough. But the guy's going to a hair care place or a salon, and there's
Yeah, beauty supply place, something.
those. What do they go from 40 to 60%? Those things.
I think they start like at 50% on up.
So that is absolutely, and you combine that again. I don't want to tell people how to do this stupid shit, but you know, you add in, you know, a strong ass, and it is going to ruin your day. Like when it touches, it's going to go off. It's bad.
Right. So you walk into somebody's home and they've got 20, 30 hydrogen peroxide bottles from CVS, and you know, something boiling away on the stove. That is that's an indication, or a couple bottles of high strength stuff would be an indication.
Or even
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, and let's take that just a different step, because I'm sure you guys have been on calls, I know I have, where it's a suspicious odor, and the odor call, you get there, you bring up your multi-ray, your MSA, you know, whatever multi-gas system that you have, and you go up and your VOC start going up right away at the front door. And you open the door and you're thinking, or before you open the door, you're thinking, okay, this is a meth lab. Or you're like us, because we're sick, sadistic people. Maybe this is some type of bomb lab or something. And you open the door and there's a bunch of people in there doing nails. Or they have their homemade hair salon inside there. You know, this is, and what's happened around the country is there's been a significant increase in people doing home businesses, whether they're regulated or not, licensed or not, and we, at least here in Florida, are getting a lot of false calls for the chemical, I shouldn't say a false call because it is an actual call, chemical odor for that strong acetone smell, that strong whatever, and these people are doing nails or hair or whatever, and you're opening these apartments, and it's, okay, somebody's running an illegal hair salon or nail salon in their apartment. So it kind of gets, you know, we're already thinking terrorism, meth lab, whatever, and then we're dialing it into something that's maybe less significant as far as the terrorism round. So it's just something to keep in the back of your mind.
Well, I don't remember who was saying it, but you see the bunch of bottles of the CVS grade 3% hydrogen peroxide on the floor. You know, that maybe I was just one of those kids, but when I was a kid, do you remember that stuff, Bud Ice? Remember Bud Ice? You know, Budweiser Ice?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe like, whatever, 20 years ago. We used to pour it into a aluminum tin pan, and used to pour like a 12-pack in there, and then you put it in the freezer. And what would happen is the ice, the water would crystallize, but the alcohol would not. And so what you do is you decant out the alcohol, and you would have a supercharged beer that was flat, but it would knock your socks off because you'd have it in maybe a pint. Well, I'm going to probably get in trouble with even saying this, but hydrogen peroxide, you can do the same thing, but you just work on the other side. You have differing boiling points, we'll say. So if you hold something at a very specific temperature and one part boils away and the other part sticks back, it's going to concentrate. But the problem is you don't know at what point. There's no quantitative, there's no qualitative measurement for this at the home. So again, with these unknown quantities, you're don't lose your hand.
Yeah,
because you can quickly get into concentrations of peroxide that it becomes self decomposing.
Right.
Which is another thing in other peroxide-based explosives, that they will use high-strength peroxides and keep them cold, because you get peroxides at room temperature, and they will self-decompose rapidly.
Well, and the whole thing goes back to a size up of the call. When you come up on these things and you see something like this, what do you see? Just like we mentioned in some of the other shows, what do I got? What am I doing? What do I need? Those are your 3 basic tips that you need for your size up. Well, if I see, especially here in Florida, I see 7 or 8 the little canisters of gasoline antifreeze. I mean, Jesus Christ, the heat index today was 106 here in Orlando. It doesn't freeze at all, really, but where I need 6 or 7 things of gasoline antifreeze, I should be thinking something else. That's a clue. That's a clue that they're probably using that for meth because they use that in separating the products, and I'm not going to get into the whole description of it, but how they separate the good stuff from the bad stuff and use it to make meth. So the whole thing goes back to the initial size up.
Wow. Yeah.
I got to add because Todd had a few questions, and I apologize because I'm actually running the things and clicking and probably screwing it up. But he had also added that it can be a blasting cap replacement to complete the firing train, and so
right, it can be used. It can be used as that primary explosive, right? I believe that's what it's called, a primary explosive.
Yeah, it's a primary.
I don't want to get the term. You sound way more convincing because you're doing the walking around and talking like in the movies where the camera follows you. And you're like, oh, that's he must know.
The Blair Mike Project.
Blair Mike.
I just picture little kids with knives at your knees.
Oh, you have no idea. I was like screaming at the kids no more than 2 minutes before the show started to lay in bed and be quiet.
I'll trade you.
I got it all on Audacity. Yeah, open mic.
If we are faced with a potential, a possible TATP operation, let's say we go into that house, we have the crystalline powder in the refrigerator. It looks like TATP. It smells like TATP. We're not testing it. I'm just saying if it looks like a duck and smells like a duck and it quacks like a duck, should we act like a duck? And I would say prudence would say yes. We are going to treat it like that. We're going to set up our hot zone, which would be based upon whatever, the quantity, and then there's that whole new guide in the back of the 2016 ERG that will tell you the blast radius, so we go up that thing. So do we have the ability with our current cadre of metering to monitor this? Not to say that we would, because again, once we figure out that it possibly is, it's pretty much a PD matter only. But if we were pressed into service, do we have something, a technology or anything like that?
Well, that brings up a good point because there was a department that took a white powder, put it on a device, I don't want to say the name of it, lowered the arm down, and hazmat technicians know what I'm talking about, and it blew up on them from the compression. From the compression. So it goes back to...
Makes a great gag, by the way, for April.
That arm break,
yeah, it never gets old.
I can only imagine with what you guys do. But all kidding aside, what these guys did was very lucky because they treat it like a regular white powder call. And just not to get off topic, but if you have a protocol for testing white powders, follow it. Don't jump from A to W for testing something, and that's kind of what they did, and they put something down on there that's shock sensitive, and it ended up being TATP, and it blew up on them. So there are things that we need to look at, not only sizing up the scene, but has this been in contact? Have people already been manipulating it? Has this gone through the mail? There's a lot of things that we need to look at before we start our testing process. Getting back to the original question, what would we do? Number one thing, and I can't stress this enough, is size up.
Yeah.
And go from there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm just, and honestly, I just kind of tripped across something. It's not like I know about these. Am I here? Mike's out.
I'm here. No, I'm still here.
That I don't know about all these different technologies because honestly, they're not something. They're more for like. I'm gonna say like hospital, not hospital, but airports, is that you can use quadrupole resonance (NQR), which is kind of like an MRI machine or something like that. X-ray based diffraction, and then you have that mass spec that we actually have the ability to use. This is where they take that swab of your luggage handle and then they run into the machine, and they say that basically. Commercial EDS, which is the explosive trait detection and stuff like that, aren't foolproof. Dogs aren't foolproof because they're peroxide-based explosives and they lack the metal or the nitro groups that would make them able to be detected by standard screening or rapid identification methods. So that's really weird. You know, like there's no electrical charges. You don't need any wires. So it's really easy to pass this stuff through. Remember that? Oh my goodness! It's like
That's a search dog right now. There's TATP present.
It's like remember when the Glock came out, the handgun, the Glock, and they said it's a plant gun. Holy cow! Everybody's gonna be bringing these through the planes and everything. But is it real? I mean, can you make this stuff that foolproof that you can get it through safely onto a plane or something like that without being detected? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, going back to the chemistry of it all, and your original question, Bobby, what can we use to identify it? So if somebody walked into a room, we're not really identifying it, but we're putting something in the microwave, I can tell.
Yes, sorry.
That's awesome. It's probably not TATP. I'm just gonna hazard a guess.
No. No, I do all my drawing out in the sun.
But if we did go into a room, what air monitoring would we think would take place? The unknown call. We take a multi-gas. We're supposed to take radiation, and we're supposed to take pH paper. That's what you're supposed to do. Okay, now let's do some reality check here. We're going to something that's a smell. We're probably not going to be taking radiation. Everybody agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, well, you got the IED angle, but I would agree with
that. Yeah. So
you know,
I'm going to be going. Go ahead.
The radiation I'm going to be worried about, I'm going to be catching on the street. That's gamma. So
exactly.
If it hasn't gone off and there isn't deliberation of possible alpha and beta, which is, again, later on, then I'd probably omit it. I'd probably leave it at home. Maybe dose them.
But does radiation give off a smell, though?
No, not well, no.
There's some people in New York City that think we get that a lot. You know, like I can smell radiation.
They smell it. And they probably got like aluminum foil over their head and stuff like that,
yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So I've seen that in Central Park, actually. So anyway, if we know we're going to an odor,
hobbling.
If we know we're going to an odor, we're going to take a multi-gas. We're going to take pH paper, maybe wet it just to see if something attracts to it. And maybe we'll take a Draeger tube with the WMD set to it and see if something. That's a far extreme. But our major thing, and I think everyone would agree, is going to be your multigas. And what on your multigas is going to pop up? We're going to see a VOC, more than likely. Right. We may or may not see an LEL. And that's probably it. Maybe a slight drop in O2 if we're inside a building. But really the big thing that we're looking at, or that I'm going to be looking at, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, I've been wrong once or twice, probably 10 times or more. The VOC is really what we're looking at jumping up, right?
Well, go ahead, Mike.
That's what's going to that's what's going to draw me in.
I mean, if we're talking specifically about TATP, I guess the only VOC you're really going to get is going to be off the acetone.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So if and that is all going to depend on where in the process they are in the whole thing.
Right. See, I'm not looking this. Well, I actually am looking this up. But while I'm looking this up, I'm going to, based upon that, 5-gas, whatever the hell you want to call it, the PID and the oxygen and the LEL, you're not going to see the oxygen depression, right? It's not going to be displacing oxygen, so that's off the chart. The LEL or the combustible, again, unless your meter is a little more accurate than mine or resolution's better than mine, you're going to have to hit a threshold of 10,000 parts per million for it to even click once, right?
Right. Yep.
So mine goes into full percentages. So the PID is going to be my probably most resolution to find something because this does have the carbon, this does have the hydrogen, and that's going to be good for me.
Right. And Todd Burton just mentioned something. HMTD has a fishy odor, which is a different form of TATP, for lack of a better term.
Okay.
Right.
And
that's an interesting. That's an interesting point. Fishy odor.
That's good to know.
Todd
Yeah.
also sent, and I'm going to try to put it up here because I know you guys have a show after this, and we had a question from the field. I'm going to try to screen share something to show that we actually, you might not find the information from us. Is that sharing, guys?
Yeah.
But just
Yep,
in this
yep, I've
episode,
seen-
so you
Wait,
want to screen share?
Phil,
He said we could use his name, so if you want to read out his name, I'm sure
Yeah.
he'd be very excited.
Todd.
Phil.
Yeah.
Push on the top. You'll see sent to everybody. Click that, and it'll lock. There you go. Now it's locked. Good.
Okay, just an example. We'll put this
Perfect.
with Todd's permission on Hazmat Nation, and the discussion being the relationship between going on a drug lab and whether or not there would be explosives or vice versa. This is a nice chart that Todd just provided just right now here within the show that has easy to follow. I was looking through it as far as what type of chemical and if you would find them in both a drug lab and or homemade explosives, HME as they're calling it, labs. So you probably can't read it on your screen now, but it's something with Todd's further permission, we'll footnote him, and he San Diego County as well as IEC, which is a trading company here in California, and get that out to everybody. So, some sort of nugget. Take it to Starbucks
That's
with
awesome.
$6, and you can get a cup of coffee.
Yeah, and we are selling that for a modest price if you want that.
Yes.
I'll print them on my own
That's-
computer.
That's very good, Todd. Thank you
Get
very
your-
much. That's awesome.
Your chemical compatibility mug.
Oh yeah, you can fit it all on there.
Yeah, there you go. Buy a mug and get the compatibility chart.
Cup of coffee while we investigate. No, I'm reading up right now.
I put all of our alerts on the back of the bathroom stall door because I know at least everybody will see them once in the day.
Well, that's assuming you have guys that close the stall door.
Or have a door. Hey, did we want to try to cover the question, Mike? We had
Yes.
we're running out of
If
time.
someone could jump on, they could probably read it. I'm only on my phone. I don't have my screens with me. But basically, somebody reached out and they said, "Hey, what do you know about using a balloon-like device to capture vapors from ammonia and chlorine?" And he went into saying that it was an interesting thing that he had heard about or he had seen, and he was just concerned because what if the balloon failed? Wouldn't you have all these vapors all of a sudden letting go? And it was the first time I'd ever heard of a balloon-like device to capture vapors, and I promised him that I would look into it, and I reached out to a bunch of people that I know across the country. No one had ever heard of it. And so I'm bringing it to you guys to see if you guys have ever heard of using a balloon-like device over a chlorine leak or an ammonia leak to suppress the vapors for an entry or a recovery,
Are you
a
saying?
rescue.
Wait, now just to clarify, are you saying that the guy mixed ammonia and chlorine like we do to clean the bathroom and it makes a more gooder cleaning solution?
No, I think this was literally some kind of a balloon device for a chlorine leak that you put over the leak and you capture the vapors.
Okay, then
Actually, I have this question. I just pulled it up. Travis Holloman texted us, and it was had a question. Witnessed a training session where units responded to a chlorine bomb explosion, including hazmat crew, jumped out of the rig, donned level A, made quick entry to perform a rescue mitigation ops. They deployed a salvage cover in a balloon fashion and approached a cylinder covering them, and then rescued the mannequins.
Yep.
Never seen the balloon technique. And that's pretty. He goes into some other things, but that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
all right. So hold on a second. I got this. All right. Can you see what I put up?
Oh, yeah, I was
Yep.
going to do the
Yep.
same. Nice.
You gotta
Okay.
freeze his thing. Yeah.
I have seen this.
So this is the TARP technique. This isn't a totally different balloon technique.
That's what I'm thinking he's doing because the tarp technique really does work. If you go with a tarp that's, let's say, a lot bigger, if you have let's say a 1-ton container, if you use, and I'm estimating here, a 12-foot by 20-foot standard Home Depot tarp, and me and Mike take point A and B, which is the short side, and we just start walking across, and we just bring it up and over the tank. what'll happen is the off gas and the pressurized gases coming out will be forced to almost cool quicker than it should, and it will drop and it will form an ice plug quickly. That's the way
Outstanding.
I see it. So this is the YouTube on them doing it. You know, maybe I can play it. Let me see.
And,
Yeah, here, look.
yeah.
Oh, perfect.
Put it over it, and there is no trick to it. And now what happens is, because they just basically just tack down the corners. We've done this a couple of times, not live, but in training, and it works.
So you're not the way the question was formed. I was getting the impression that they were literally capturing the vapors in a balloon-like substance, and he was concerned about it rupturing. So this is not. There is no real capturing pressurized vapor. You're just kind of using cooling technique to bring down the vapor pressure, and or directing the vapors to another place away from victims.
Yeah, the way I interpret this move is that you're going to kind of make a micro atmosphere inside that tent, and you're going to initiate a plug so that when that thing stops, pull back the part, and now you can do whatever you got to do.
So the video, and we're talking about, because I had one I was going to try to put up as well. He was talking chlorine, and that's ammonia, right?
Mm-hmm. I think it's the same
Right.
thing. Basically, it's the same kind of operation.
And we did, since this isn't ripping off from somebody else, similar to with ammonia, not chlorine, but ammonia. You guys able to see this?
I got to say that you guys have a guy that is up on the truck videotaping this thing. That's bold.
So
That's awesome.
I was right in there at about 5,000 ppm. But there's the blower technique for a rescue also, where you bring in a blower and you divert the what's going on there. Stop right.